Two winner go home games tonight. What the heck are the Kings doing? And the most exciting playoff matchups to watch. It's the Locked On NBA Game Night Show. Let's go.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On Fridays, I'm your co-host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and the host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
Muted. I'm John Karalis. You can find me on Twitter at John_Karalis, and host of the Locked On Celtics podcast. It's already Friday for me, man. I'm muting myself. I'm off to a great start.
Look, we
like
get
the
to
Sacramento Kings
early. We're not staying up late because there are no games on Thursday here. By the way, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We're doing this in the afternoon. This is kind of cool. We're not used to this here.
It's funny that I function better when the sun has set, even though it's nice to have the sun outside. It's an afternoon. There's no games on a Thursday night. It's kind of weird. We're getting ready for the real season here.
Yeah, but look, there's two winner go home games for the play-in tournament. We're going to preview those in the first segment here. We want to get into the Sacramento Kings hiring Scott Perry really quickly. Is that good or bad, or is their process kind of thrown off right there? And then just some things that we're excited about in the playoffs because it's about to be fun. No games on Thursday night, but the NBA never stops here. So let's get into a preview of the Friday games, John. And let's start in the Eastern Conference with the 10-seed Miami Heat traveling to Atlanta to take on the 8th-seeded Hawks here. Who you got in this one?
I got Miami. I just, even though the Hawks were the higher seed, I just think that Miami, when you get Tyler Herro rolling like this, it's about whether he and somebody on the bench can come through big. And I just feel like Bam Adebayo will have a much better game. Combine him with Tyler Herro and the Hawks, I think are reeling a little bit. I'm not the biggest believer in game-to-game momentum, but I think after that last game, you can figure out that you can really not count on Trae Young to come through for you in those big moments. If you can shut everybody else down, I think they're going to come through. Miami. It's going to be Miami again, finding a way. Kind of what they do, right? Like it's unbelievable.
Kind of what they do. So per FanDuel, they're favored by a point. They're -1 in this one, even as a road favorite here. I'm kind of with you, right? With Tyler Herro playing the way that he does, who's going to slow him down for this Atlanta Hawks team? And then on the offensive side for the Hawks, in that loss to the Orlando Magic, Trae Young's the only person that scored 20 or more points in that game. Like, he just got zero help. And we know you're not the biggest Trae Young guy. I don't know if he can just put it all on his shoulders and like almost will that team to victory, which is seriously what it's probably going to take.
They're going to pack the paint. I think Miami's going to play a lot of their zone. They're going to dare Atlanta to beat them from three. And Atlanta did not come through from three in that first game. And now I think the challenge is going to be there. Trae Young I'm not the biggest Trae Young guy because he's a 34% three-point shooter. He's not the three-point shooter that people think he is. And I think you bother him, you send some length at him, but you still dare him. You take away his passing, which is his elite skill. You take away his passing, you dare him to shoot you to a victory. It's possible that he can. It's possible that he can go out there and hit a bunch if he gets hot, but I'm playing the percentages. I'm packing the paint. I'm taking away his passing lanes. And I'm saying you're going to have to hit 6-7 threes to beat me.
It feels like it's going to take more than just him being the three-point shooter. They were 4 of 21 in that loss to the Orlando Magic. They took just 21 threes, and it feels like you're not going to beat very many teams when that's the case. I think we're both kind of in agreement here that it just feels like The Heat, I don't want to say they're going to roll, but it feels like they're going to win this game. And it's just Miami, and it's kind of what they do. At least it feels just like there's more help there, better players, better talent, even though Atlanta has the better record. Let's switch over to the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm completely blanking here on the games. Taking on the Dallas Mavericks, the 10 seed Mavericks going to the Memphis Grizzlies. How you feeling about this one?
I would love for it to be the Mavericks, but I think it's going to be the Grizzlies. It depends on John Morant's ankle. And
that's the biggest thing, right?
Right. So my feeling is going to be, obviously, it's going to be the Grizzlies. I think, obviously, Dallas has been struggling for good reason. But, look, if Anthony Davis can come through, then you have the potential for to you put Zach Edey in foul trouble, which he's been in. You could put you can get there, but you can get Jaren Jackson Jr., who's a foul magnet. You can get him into foul trouble. Anthony Davis has the potential to foul out 2 centers, and if he do that, then obviously that's going to change the entire thing. So Memphis is clearly the better team, but Anthony Davis is the one player in this matchup that can really change things by playing well.
Yeah, and I thought the Zach Edey minutes in the Memphis Grizzlies loss to the Golden State Warriors were really, really interesting because they needed him in there for the rebounding, 17 boards, but the turnovers that he had and things were really difficult. And he still struggles defending in space a little bit, and Davis can have some range. So how is that matchup between those two guys going to look? That if you're pulling Edey out of the paint, does that really open things up for the Dallas Mavericks a little bit more? And how does that change kind of the dynamics out there on the court? I think 3-point shooting is going to be a big deal in this one too. You saw the Mavericks go into Sacramento and shoot much better from 3 and take more attempts than they normally do. And you saw Memphis not taking a ton of attempts against the Golden State Warriors, only 26 attempts there. That's kind of the great equalizer in something like this. And if, Dallas, who on paper looks like the worst team, just gets hot from 3, all of a sudden now, especially if John Morant is still kind of banged up, and he said he's playing in this game, but we don't know to what degree he's healthy. I don't know. That's the type of thing that could swing this one. And it, in a fluky winner go home situation, all it takes is one little swing, and all of a sudden the game is not what you want it to be.
Right. Look, Anthony Davis had a big shooting night against Sacramento from deep. So that's always possible. Klay Thompson was unconscious early in that game. So if he's hitting, and then you just got to find something from somebody else. Can Caleb Martin get some minutes and hit some shots? It's not ideal, but if one of these other guys, I don't know who's going to play, but if one of these other guys off the bench, Max Christie, Dante Exo, if one of these guys can hit a few 3-pointers, then yes, that changes the calculus in this game. Do you know that OKC lost to Dallas 3 times this season?
Wild to me. Wild that was the case.
All 3 times without Luka Doncic. So it would be like, what? It wasn't even like Luka was part of it. So you say, well, they don't have Luka, and it was Kyrie, and it's a shame they don't have Kyrie. But man, that would make for such an interesting, if there was at least a little bit more health, that would make such an interesting first round discussion of like, OKC in the first round is playing the one team that had their number this season.
It feels like we'll get to them in the third segment as we kind of like look towards the playoffs and what we're excited to see, because they're a team that I'm very excited to watch. But it's like it almost could be like a doomsday scenario, just kind of based off of how the regular season has gone for them. But I think they're probably going to end up being fine. In this one, by the way, Memphis Grizzlies are favored by 6.5 per FanDuel. So I don't think anyone's really expecting Dallas to win this one, and maybe their season will be mercifully over in about 48 hours from now. So coming up next, Sacramento Kings moving on from Monty McNair. They already got someone in place less than 8 hours after they parted ways with him. Let's break down what happened and what that means for the future of that team. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. And with Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help take your business to the next level. Upwork gives flexibility by connecting them with the top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. So whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with your next marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who can deliver incredible results. And posting a job is free and simple. And within a day, you're going to get multiple qualified candidates to choose from. So visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans not Locked On Pelicans. Oh boy, that was a mistake here. Locked On NBA Game Night. There you go. I just recorded Locked On Pelicans. The muscle memory is strong right here. Locked On NBA Game Night, your first listen today and every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, covering every single game across the association this season. We'll also be going into the offseason too with all the topics that you want to hear about and the biggest stories around the league here. So subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And don't forget about your favorite team's newsletter. You can go to lockedondaily.com to subscribe. Just click on your favorite team's logo, and you're going to get Locked On whatever in your inbox Monday through Friday. So let's get into the Sacramento Kings getting eliminated from playoff contention. Just season is done after losing at home to the kind of sad Dallas Mavericks in the play-in tournament, and quickly moving on from Monty McNair about an hour after the game, him meeting with ownership and them mutually deciding to part ways, which is, we'll pay you some money to not show up to work tomorrow. And that person says yes to that sort of thing. But immediately coming in with a new hire of Scott Perry to lead their front office here. You know, I've seen something similar to this in New Orleans, where they let David Griffin go, and then less than 48 hours later, they had hired Joe Dumars to replace him as the president of basketball operations here. Look, regardless of Scott Perry, whether he's the right guy or not for the job, not doing like a proper search for your lead basketball executive feels like a broken process to me, and something that's very concerning.
Yeah, look, the new collective bargaining agreement is a beast. And you have to make sure that you have a solid plan for what's coming here. That second apron, the all of the rules, all of who's out there that's dealing with the ramifications of it. This is a critical time to be retooling. And I think Sacramento, New Orleans, these teams that are starting fresh to some degree are kind of test cases for what this new collective bargaining is going to be. Teams like Boston, Phoenix, the over the second apron teams that under old circumstances would still be good and just say, hey, we're going to pay the tax, are now having to make trades. Like Kevin Durant is gone from Phoenix for other reasons too, but
yeah,
financial for sure. Drew Holiday from the Celtics is one of the guys I expect to be moved just for financial purposes. There are going to be veteran players who make money out there on the market. Now, the Kings aren't exactly starting from a place of being able to spend whatever, but that's what makes them a challenge. And there's going to be, like I said, when Drew Holiday is out there available and you say, hey, here's a veteran guy, a point guard, a guy that you could use for a young team, or actually they're not
that young, man.
It's not that young team, but a team that hasn't put it all together. That's a calming championship voice. Here's a guy that has 2 rings, potentially 3 after this season, that you can maybe count on if you can find a way to work a deal. All of that is to say that Perry is going to have his hands full. Are you sure, Sacramento? Are you sure that he has the grasp of everything that's happening under this new environment to make this work? Or is this just the guy that Vivek Ranadive has a good relationship with? And you're like, yeah, we're just going to hire this guy. Because if it's the latter, that's a big problem. It has to be the former.
Yeah, that's kind of what I went through here in New Orleans, right? Maybe Joe Dumars is the guy to handle being your lead executive. Maybe Scott Perry is the guy, but shouldn't you want him to beat out other people to like win the job versus just being like, here you go, because we're familiar with you in our front office. And he worked there before, most recently has been with the league office. And before that, working with the New York Knicks, at least having had some experience in Sacramento and having some experience in New York, where you have James Dolan and Runadive both being kind of like hands-on, slightly meddling owners, at least how to almost like manage up in a sense with those type of people. So maybe that does make him kind of more qualified than others for this sort of thing, because if you put someone into this Kings job knowing that, maybe Vlade Divac is still kind of involved in there might be some shadow GMing going on there in Sacramento too with other people, right? Like it just seems like it's a mess, and you need someone who knows how to handle maybe mess isn't the right word. It's just
mess is the right word.
It's a cluster is what I would say. And like at least have someone who knows how to manage and walk through and navigate all of that is going to be the thing. But like they're in a weird spot. They're in a weird spot where you have Domantas Sabonis, who, like, I think people around the league are going to start questioning, like, does he lead to winning? Is he a winning kind of player? He's good, puts up good numbers, but is he a winning player? Mm-hmm. You're the Chicago Bulls of a couple of years ago with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. Your head coach stuff is unsettled here. If you're picking someone that's going to try and chart your course for your next 5 to 10 years with this franchise, shouldn't you cast a wide, exhaustive search to make sure you hire the absolute best person possible, and not, as you just said, hiring someone that's friendly with your owner or the front office? Like that's what's so shocking about these type of moves going so quickly. Look, this wasn't done in the past couple of hours by the time we're recording this. This has probably been set for at least a week was the plan.
Yeah. And so I think that's the ownership. That's where ownership is so critical, right? The owner makes the deal. The owner makes the call. And if this is a guy the ownership likes, then that's the guy who's going to get hired. Now, okay, it's done. They didn't do the search, and Perry is the guy. To your point, I think it's a good one. You need somebody who can kind of massage the message to the top, and figure out how to get the meddling guy to be satisfied without messing things up. Now the critical hires beyond Scott Perry are the cap gurus, the guys with the ledgers, and the guys who understand how to manipulate this system. This is the critical thing. I look at the Boston Celtics, the team I cover, and they have an incredible front office. And non-meddling ownership, but they have a credible front office that understood ahead of time what the second apron was going to do. So they knew last season, 2 seasons ago, they had to lock up. Once they had the team, let's lock these guys up long-term, and then we can make our decisions based on how much we want to pay and the penalties and all of that. So that's what a good front office does. That's what OKC does. You know what I mean? That's what these front offices with good teams, they see what's coming. They understand how you manipulate things. So now Sacramento, you have to figure out, like, I know you just brought in Zach LaVine and you get DeMar DeRozan in. Why you thought those two guys, after having so much success in Chicago, were going to find some success in Sacramento? Fine, you got them. Now what do you do with them? What do you do with Sabonis? That's big money. Zach LaVine next season, $47.5 million. Sabonis, $43.6 million. DeMar DeRozan, almost $25 million. That's a lot of money tied up in a mediocre core. So how do you fix that? And the pressure from the ownership, this is where Scott Perry's relationship is going to come in huge.
It feels like they're not going to want to do a rebuild, right? Like the move would be you just trade everyone and get whatever you can, even if you're selling them for 50 cents on the dollar, even if it's someone like Sabonis for 50 cents of the dollar, because if you don't bottom out, you're going to be in that purgatory state. And they talked about this on Locked On NBA Game Night yesterday of like, cool, you're going to be fighting for the play-in tournament every year. And maybe you get in one year, maybe you don't, but then you have the 13th, 14th overall pick in every NBA draft going forward. And you're just never escaping that hamster wheel that you're on at that point in time. So you've just got to bottom out is what it feels like for Sacramento, which is such a shame from where they were just 2 years ago. But what else do you do here?
Okay, so the number one thing is you don't panic, right? So if there's you do have to sell and bottom out and all of that. You have to look at now. I'm not a draft expert, so I don't know what's coming on in 2-3 drafts from now. So I don't know where the next Cooper flag is coming from, but you got to set yourself up for that particular draft. You got to find yourself your next star. And again, and my final point on this, you have to scan these second apron teams who are starting to dump players, good players, because they have to, and find your way in, whether it's a single team. Look, Sabonis makes $43.6 million. That's a number that can facilitate a deal somehow from one of these big teams. You need big money to match a trade. Get in, get creative, find a way to start picking at the bones of teams that are starting to shed salary. The league has created this wheel now where the good teams are going to be broken up quickly, and the buzzards that are flying around are going to be able to pick at what's left and start to build a good team. That's where Sacramento is going to have to thrive.
No, that makes a ton of sense, and I actually agree with that. So we'll leave it right there. Go to Locked On Kings for more. I'm certainly going to be making Locked On Kings my second listen.
Go to Locked On Kings anyway. They're great.
Yeah, they have Matt George is awesome. They have so much fun over on that show, and I'm sorry, Sacramento Kings fans, for what y'all are going through right now.
Jeez.
All right, coming up next, let's preview some of the playoff series. We're going to look at the things we're just most excited about when it comes to the NBA postseason. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night is brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. And now I budget a little bit better, put more of that money in my pocket for whatever I need. And if you're managing money with your partner, they make it smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. And thank you for making it Locked On NBA Game Night. Did it this time. Every game, every night, even though there were no games on Thursday night. But we're looking at all the games going forward, the 2 play-in games that we previewed earlier. We're going to look at some of the playoff series here too, because I'm pretty excited about it. Like I said, for your second listen, it's got to be Locked On Kings. It's got to be Locked On Kings to just understand what's going on there. That's one of my favorite shows on our network here too. All right, the playoffs, literally around the corner from when we're recording this. It's 2 days from now, and I am excited. Looking at the playoff bracket right now, like literally gets me pumped. If you could see me here, the blood's flowing. I feel it. Playoff basketball, and I'm not stressed because the team I cover is not in it at all here. So that's kind of cool. All right, John, we're going to leave the Celtics out of this for a second, but I'm going to put a question to you. What series are you most excited for in the first round?
Oh man. I'm going to say LA Denver.
Okay.
The Clippers Denver is going to be an interesting one because I'm fascinated by how Denver is going to react to the Michael Malone firing. I'm fascinated by how the Clippers are going to look as they are the healthiest they've been for a while.
Pretty much.
Like so the Clippers, they've bucked your prediction.
I thought they were going to be I got this one so wrong.
Right. So, I mean, a lot of people did. I was with you. But is Denver, what's Denver going to be? How do they react? And, what kind of pressure does a healthy Clippers put on the Nuggets? I feel like it should be Denver. We're going to see the best of Jokic. We're going to see the best of Jamal Murray. But that Clippers team can find its way to some good defense, and like how's that going to work? What's Jokic going to do to Zubac, and how much does that matter? Because Jokic has been, he averaged a triple-double this season, and it's still, they still have a lot of questions.
Yeah, so I actually have a note on this one for when I was planning out the show today. Which team needs to win this series more, the Clippers or the Nuggets?
I'm gonna say the Nuggets.
It feels like it has to be them.
It
right?
has to be. It has to be, because they made this move, clearing house before the playoffs, specifically. They expressly to give them that dead cat bounce, to give them that, like, okay, we're doing it now, even though they came out and said, oh, these guys really didn't deserve to be fired, but we kind of, my bad. So their jobs get lost. Like, all right, whatever. But to prove to Jokic that there's a direction, these guys have to work well together. I don't know if Jokic is, where his head's at with any of this stuff, but if they lose this series after everything that happened, you got to believe that's going to be a lot of questions. The exit interview for Jokic is going to be, so do you still want to be here? How much longer do you want to be here? What do you need to see to stay, want to stay here? You got to win at least this opening round series to avoid that avalanche of questions.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. They're going to get hit with the noise around that team is going to be so unbearably loud if they don't end up winning the series, or if they get bounced out in pretty bad fashion too. I'm going to go to the East with one that I'm really excited about. I'm planning to watch every game of this series, and that is Knicks versus Pistons in that 3-6 matchup. The Pistons just being one of the best stories of the season. I'm a big Cade Cunningham fan. I'm excited to kind of watch him, at this stage and see if he can kind of like carry that Pistons team. But also these two teams it feels like they got a little bit of bad blood, right? Like we're going to get at least 2 fights in this series. It feels like, if not more than that. I kind of love that, man. When two teams like dislike each other, that's a lot of fun to me when things feel very personal here.
It's a clash of styles too. It's physical, big, kind of bruising. You're right. Like they want to mess with you. And New York, Karl Anthony Towns is seen as, I kind of almost see him as a guy that can be messed with. He's not, he's more of a finesse player. He's not.
He loves to do stupid fouls in the playoffs too.
Oh yeah. So like, I feel like New York has more talent. They're clearly I think the East is obviously Cleveland and Boston separated themselves. New York is in a tier by themselves, and then there's everybody else. But Detroit, I think Cade Cunningham's playing his best basketball of the season, and he can be in full control. If Jalen Brunson isn't 100%, if the wheels start to fall off because of the Tom Thibodeau minutes distribution all season long, like if they start to feel some of that, it's not out of the question that the Pistons can make this a tough series. I'm not saying the Pistons are going to win, but if the Pistons beat the Knicks, as much as it'd be a surprise, I'd be like, not the biggest upset in the world.
No, especially because of how well they've played them in the regular season, I think is kind of what sets the tone for that. That if, they split the series, something like that, you'd look at that and be like, oh, okay, maybe not. But they played them tough. We covered that game. I think it was on a Thursday night towards the end of the regular season, and you saw that too. So I'm really excited for that one. Let's stay in the East for a minute. Is one of the better storylines that Damian Lillard is cleared of the deep vein thrombosis and is looking like he's going to play in this first round here?
That's great news. I mean, he's not going to play in game 1, but we'll see where if he fills in here. That's obviously going to make things better for Milwaukee offensively. Indiana is favored in this series. And I like the Pacers. I've been talking about how their unpredictable nature makes them impossible to defend. I think they can take Brook Lopez and basically eliminate him from this series by the way they play. He's just not going to be able to guard in space the way he needs to with Miles Turner out there. And it's going to be difficult defensively for Milwaukee. And that's with or without Lillard. So, but at least having Lillard back would give them an offensive chance against the team that, like, this is a series that, each game you could be putting up 250, 60, 70 points in a game here. That one might be a fun one to watch. I think watching the Pacers and how they get up and down kind of frantic is a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, look, there's going to be a lot of points scored in that series. It feels like, particularly from Indiana when it comes down to it. They've been like Tyrese Halliburton's just a fun player to watch, I think, and it feels like the Pacers and Bucks just play constantly, and that's it now too. So let's get more of it. Why not?
Can we play a real or fake?
Oh yeah, of course we can.
Yeah, real or fake. The Houston Rockets are ready to prove that they belong in the playoffs.
So I was going to get to that series next, actually. So yeah, I think that's real. Like, that's a well-coached team. They finished second in the West, and look, that West was closer than I think some people realized, particularly even for that 2 and 3 seed here. But consistently over the course of the year, they're well coached. They play really good defense. So some really talented players. I think this is kind of the ultimate test for the Houston Rockets. You're going against a very hot Golden State Warriors team too, that I think a lot of experts are picking the Warriors for the upset in the first round. If Houston can win this series, let's say, it feels like they're going to make a big move to go all in this offseason, be like, we're going to try and contend for a title next year. This is, if they lose, maybe they do that too. But if they win this series, then lose in the next round, it feels like if they kind of come up short in this postseason, they're going to go all in when it comes to it.
I mean, they very easily could. They have the pieces to do it. I again, I've said this before on this podcast. I caution them about making a move that's too disruptive. You got to make sure, and I'm not saying don't make a move either. You can make a big move. You have the pieces to make a big move. This is going to be the offseason that either vaults Houston into OKC territory or screws the whole thing up. They're not going to stay where they are. They're not going to be mediocre. They're either the whole thing's going to fall apart or they're going to be awesome. I do think that they have the defense to get this done. Golden State is a thorn in Ime Udoka's side, going all the way back to his days in Boston when he lost to them in the finals. I think sending them home early is something that he wants to do. Ime is an emotional guy. I think he believes in bulletin board material, and he's going to have these guys fired up to beat Golden State. I think they can do it. I believe in Ime Udoka and his defense. I believe in these young guys. If they can just play within themselves and not get too hyped, they can do it. But if they start to lose self-control and play to their youth and inexperience, then that's why people are predicting what they're predicting. But I believe in the Rockets. I think they can do it.
Yeah, one of the stats that I look at if I think you're like a contender, and contender to me is a Final Four team, so a conference finalist, is net rating. And I think that net rating needs to be 6 or better for your team number all season long. There's only 3 teams that have that: OKC, Cleveland, and Boston, but Houston's pretty close at plus 5.4. So they're kind of like right on the cusp of at least having the statistical profile of being a very, very good team. Best net rating in the league by far was the Oklahoma City Thunder. Can anyone challenge them in the West?
I want to say yes, because
all right, man.
I want to say yeah. I don't know who though, and okay. I think there's an emotional part of me that wants to say, like, I still don't know. They've proven all year long that they're dominant and they're that good, but I look at the pieces. I'm like, how they're good.
Good.
But you look at how good they are. I'm like, wow, how did they get that good out of this roster? It just fits so perfectly that, you can compare them to other teams historically. They're like, man, all these other teams had so many big names. Maybe these names are so young that they haven't had time to get so big yet. And it just, so as much as my heart wants to say, of course you can challenge OKC, my head says, no, it's going to be OKC coming out of the West, because they've just proven all year long that, as much as skeptics like me want to be like, oh, I don't know, I can't deny what's in front of me. The OKC has been one of the most dominant teams in history, and they should walk, or not walk, but briskly walk to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, they had a 16-game lead over the 2 seed in the West, which is just wild to think about.
But it's all about matchups, and you never know.
It is. And injuries. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
And you've seen some of those guys in, Chet and others in OKC. Can you worry about that a little bit? All right. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On NBA Game Night, even though there were no games tonight, but we got you with the previews for the playoffs, for the play-in tournament, and what's going on with the Sacramento Kings on Fridays. I'm your co-host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and the host of Locked On Pelicans.
And I'm John Karalis, at John_Karalis on Twitter, and host of Locked On Celtics.
Appreciate y'all listening. Enjoy the games tonight. We've got them covered. We're going to get into the postseason here. We're going to be covering all on Locked On NBA Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Bye, everybody.